As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
One of the worst performances of my career, and they never doubted it for a second.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
I believe there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble.
You just gotta keep living, man. Livin.
Son of a bitch. He stole my life.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Welcome back to the Shot by Shot podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about a film that maybe you haven't heard of, but a film that you definitely should watch. And that is a film which Quentin Tarantino puts in his top 3 favorite films of all time. Blowout, directed by the one and only Brian De Palma, who, there's names like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas were all great friends. Noticed the movie Brats the 70s, and unfortunately the one of them who has become kind of the forgotten movie brat in terms of being like a household name is the great Brian De Palma, who is totally on the level of the filmmakers we just named, and just a filmmaker with such appreciation for the craft, and has directed a lot of some great horror movies, some great thrillers. And we're gonna get into it, break the film down, his filmmaking style, and the way he uses sound design, and along with just a lot of the commentary in his film. So this film at the time of its release was not a big commercial success, and it actually hurt John Travolta's career greatly, but it would end up being the best thing ever for his career because Quentin Tarantino would have so much appreciation for this film, and as soon as he kind of became someone with celebrity status who people wanted to listen to in interviews, gave this film so much praise and kind of revitalized the audience for this film. And it's what led him to cast Travolta in Pulp Fiction, which was a very controversial decision at the time, but was probably the best move ever for his career. So, Oscar, what are your thoughts on Brian De Palma's Blowout?
Yeah, this is such an unbelievable film. I think for me, the best way to sum it up is that this is the only film school that you'll ever need. This film just has every single aspect of a film just tuned to perfection, and it is so amazing to watch every single time. And that's what Brian De Palma does. He manages to create these incredible films from so many genres, like you said, and just make them all so original and entertaining to watch, but just being so well directed, thought out, acted. Like you said, the sound design in all his films, the cinematography is absolutely unbelievable, and this is his best for me, and is absolutely one of my favorite films ever. For me, this is John Travolta's best role and performance. He is incredible, especially what's her name, Nancy Allen as well. I think is really, really good, even though I hear quite a lot of hate for her performance in this. I think it's really good. And John Lithgow as well. Really surprising role for him. He plays such a sinister character, and it really works well for him because you're kind of often seeing nowadays in these really comedic roles that just don't really work. But he and De Palma kind of have a really good relationship, and they've done a number of films together. But yeah, this is kind of a standout role in his career for me. But yeah, I absolutely love this film to bits. I've seen it like 3 times now, and it just somehow gets better every watch for me.
Yeah, I think De Palma's really underrated, maybe more appreciated in film circles, but like you said at the start, like he's in this big group of like some of the best ever do it, and he's kind of been forgotten, and I think he is one of the greatest ever American filmmakers. He's one of my favorite just directors of all time. And yeah, over the last like 2 months, I've watched like his whole filmography, like all 26, I think it is, of his feature films, which he's just like jumped right up to the top of my favorite directors list, and I think De Palma or Blowout is definitely his masterpiece. It's always been my favorite since I've seen it from him, because it's just really a blend of like all the elements that work through all of his career just into one film, and it's like one of those films that you watch and you think like it's almost like this is like made for me when you watch it. And like all the like the voyeurism, like it's a very common trait in his films, especially for when he takes like influence from Hitchcock. Like he's got the horror, which he was mostly known for at the time when this came out, because Carrie was his biggest film at the time, and it's even got political conspiracies, because there's a presidential candidate getting killed, which a lot of his early films like Hi Mom and Gootings were all about JFK's assassination. They always had like plot lines with that in it, So it's just like all the things that like when you go back and watch his films, like everything is like just in here in some way. And I think it's just his best technical film as well, just like incorporating all of these long like trademarks of like long takes and split diopter shots, which I love every time he uses them. So yeah, this is just a masterpiece. I love the cast as well. Like John Travolta's, I think this is his best role as well. And Nancy Allen returning as a love interest for Travolta because they were together in Carrie as well. So it's a nice thing. And it was De Palma's wife, or Nancy was De Palma's wife at the time, so she was in a couple of his big films around the 80s. And I love her in all these films. I don't get the hate that she gets if she does, if that is a common thing, but she is some of the highlights of a couple of these films. And I think they work brilliantly here as like this kind of like duo because I think they have great chemistry. And John Lithgow, like you were saying, I think he's brilliant as the killer. He kind of has the same role in Raising Cain from De Palma. So this was like he'll kind of like just put him in this role of being the killer. Just kind of stayed there, but he does it so brilliantly. So yeah, I think De Palma just like his passion for films, just like in every scene in this. Like there's so many moments where you just like in awe of like how he's done that, or like you were saying, it is like a film school. He just uses so many techniques and kind of just shows you how to make the perfect film. So I think this is one of my favorite films of all time. I love it so much. He's like a filmmaker's filmmaker. We already said like no Tarantino loves him. Like Noah Baumbach made a documentary about how much he loved him pretty much, which is a great watch. So yeah, he's a lot of my favorite filmmaker. So he's just one of the goats.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's interesting how both of you talked about this being like a film school type of movie, not in like that it's only for people in film school, but like you can learn so much about filmmaking from it. Not just from the same way you can look at a movie like, Goodfellas and learn a lot about filmmaking from the style of it, but this film is a film that about filmmaking. And when we hear films about filmmaking, we think of like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Sunset Boulevard, Mulholland Drive, films like that. This is not one that really gets brought up. And I think it's so interesting how it kind of flips what we think of with filmmaking because our brains, of course, go to the visual, but sound is just as big of a part of filmmaking as visual. It's a combination of synchronization between picture and audio, and Brian De Palma really highlights that here with this film actually being a remake of Blow Up from 1966, directed by one of my other favorite filmmakers, Michelangelo Antonioni, which is about a photographer who thinks he sees a murder happen or like the seeds of a murder, and because of that, and then so Brian what De Palma does here is he flips that, and instead of it's not picture, he shows the intrusiveness of filmmaking. And he doesn't do it through picture the way Hitchcock's Rear Window did or the way Antonioni's Blow Up did with visual. He does it instead with sound. And you see this when Travolta's out capturing sounds and the people notice him and they think like it's weird that he's like eavesdropping on them, but he doesn't even, care to stop eavesdropping. Like he still continues to do it. And I think that there's just such an appreciation for film sound and really calls our attention to the fact that that is a part of the craft. And I think as a whole, this is just a film that's very ahead of its time and it's very relevant today in that, today we have such access to video and audio of like so many different details of life and snippets of life. And everyone, through the internet and social media or whatever is like their own detective, kind of maybe seeing things that might not be there or like investigating, these little details that may or may not mean anything. So I think this film is very ahead of its time in, the way capturing picture and audio, how human beings can look at that and kind of investigate it. And, of course, then got to mention one of my absolute favorite things about this film is the way it captures the greatest city in the world, Philadelphia. And the problem I actually did not know was grew up in Philly. Before I saw this, I didn't know he grew up here, but you can see when I first watched it, there was such an appreciation for the city. You can see, and like I think he does the greatest job of any director ever here at just capturing the beauty of the city and so many landmarks and elements that I'll touch more on later. But there's just such a love for the city in this film, and it really isn't just kind of a backdrop the way a movie like Shazam does, where it's just this any city backdrop. He really knows what to highlight in the city and to capture the kind of beauty and the aesthetic of it and these landmarks, which I love so very much and helps me connect with it. So we're going to get right into to all the brilliant things Brian De Palma does with his filmmaking. But first, I just want to mention, the great team that he had around him on this film. The score was composed by Pino Donaggio, who was an Italian composer. He had worked with De Palma on films like Carrie, Body Double, Dress to Kill, along with many horror movies he did scores for. It was shot, the beautiful cinematography of this film. This film is a beautiful looking film, absolutely. From Vilmos Zsigmond, it's basically Z Sigmund. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. He has a very impressive resume working on films such as Michael Cimino's The Deer Hunter, Close Encounters of the Third Kind from Steven Spielberg. Also, Michael Cimino's Heaven's Gate, which is the film that ended New Hollywood. He worked with Robert Altman a couple times on Images, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, The Long Goodbye, which I hate, but also Sugarland Express with Spielberg, and he worked on Obsession and The Black Dahlia with Brian De Palma. The film was produced by George Leto, who ended up actually becoming the head of the studio when this film was made. He had also produced Obsession and Dress to Kill for Brian De Palma, but despite the film being a beautiful film to look at, the lighting is so incredible, done by Rick Martins, who also did the lighting on Michael Cimino's Deer Hunter, which was also shot by Vilmos Zsigmond. The film was edited by Paul Hirsch, who's an insanely accomplished editor. He did the original Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back, and then many films of Brian De Palma's, such as Carrie, Mission Impossible, Obsession, Mission to Mars, Hi Mom, Raising Cain, and Phantom Paradise. Production design was done by Paul Silbert, who did One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Kramer versus Kramer, Hardcore, Mikey and Nicky, which is a terrible film set in Philadelphia, which makes the worst mistake any film could make by saying 14th Street, because you could pick any street from 2nd Street to 69th Street, and the only one that doesn't exist is 14th. You also did the Pope of Greenwich Village. Special effects were done by David Dahmeyer, who did Mulholland special effects for Mulholland Drive. And then, of course, the big department, sound, which was done by Dan Stable, who had worked with De Palma on many films such as Carrie, Untouchables, Obsession, Phantom Paradise, Dress to Kill. And it was actually on Dress to Kill when he realized they had been reusing the same wind sound effect that made De Palma that inspired a lot of this film. He also worked Woody Allen on Manhattan and Annie Hall, worked on A Bronx Tale, Star 80 from Bob Fosse, who did All That Jazz, and also worked on Dirty Dancing. Michael Moisey, also as a sound designer, worked on Dress to Kill with Brian De Palma and Radio Days, which is another film that's very much about audio. Sound was mixed by James Tannenbaum, who worked on Ryan's masterpiece of film appreciation for Avatar. Also did Phantom Paradise and Untouchables with Brian De Palma. Re-recording done by Thomas Fleischman, who has worked on every Scorsese film since King of Comedy, nearly every Spike Lee film since School Days, which he did even before Do the Right Thing. Also Uncut Gems, of course, one of the greatest sound design films, Silence of the Lambs, Y Tu Mama Tambien, and the 93 Philadelphia film starring Denzel and Tom Hanks. Very impressive resume. Stunt coordination done by Carrie Lofton also, which people forget that there are some serious stunts in this movie with literally driving a car off of a bridge into the river. And that was done by Carrie Lofton, who has done a lot of very big car movies and stunt car movies, such as Rebel Without a Cause, The French Connection, Duel, Bullet, and Grand Prix, and many more. So very impressive team around Brian De Palma. But Oscar, why don't you start us off on some of the brilliant things De Palma does in terms of his direction?
So many places I can start. I won't go into everything right away because I know there's a lot to discuss. But for me, I know Ryan's already mentioned it. Just Split Doctor is like the greatest thing ever, and I think that's the most notable thing is that Brian De Palma is like the father of Split Doctor. That's what he's like most associated with in his direction across all of his films, and I think it's not just using it, but the way he uses it, I think, is so clever. We see these Split Doctor shots where like we'll have a character like listening in on a conversation, and it kind of puts on the same level of focus at the same time, and we can kind of see like the character usually on the kind of the left hand side of the frame will be kind of facing kind of across, and then we'll kind of the sound will kind of tune in, and it's like we're listening into the people having a conversation. I think it works so well for this film, and Of course, the car crash scene, the one with the owl looks incredible, and I love the way in that car crash scene, the way he just directs the sound thing. He's using the microphone, how we just kind of see it move across with we kind of see it move across, and as he's moving around all the place, we can hear all these little sounds going on, all the animals, the everything, and it's just so finely tuned, and it's such a nice thing to listen to. It's kind of one of those films. I know I'm touching on the sound here, but where it's just really nice to listen to headphones on, like you can put it at max volume. That scene is just so nice. But yeah, I along with kind of Split Doctor, I just love the way that he uses pans in this as well. Some of them are really quick and some of them are really slow. But yeah, there's just such range in this film. It's absolutely incredible. But yeah, Split Doctor is truly unbelievable thing, and I guess more people. I guess more directors should use it now, because I feel like it's kind of getting less and less. But it's kind of nice that it's a rarity almost, because it's really just nice to see, like in challenges, even though that was a fake Split Doctor shot. It's really cool to see anyway. But yeah, it's a slowly dying thing, but like I said, it's nice when it shows up. Very, very nice.
Yeah, I always love when he does a split diopter because it's not. I mean, some people probably look at it as like a gimmick, but he really does use it in such an effective way that it's really. I think he always says it's just the most effective way he can think of achieving what he's trying to do with it. It's not just trying to force in like a film technique into these film. Like my favorite one is the split diopter when Jack's like working on, he's like sounding the left and the TV on the right, and it like converts into a split screen like after that. And I think that is such a great like visual storytelling technique to start off this plot about like the president and stuff, but you're still like introducing like Jack's job. I think he's one of the greatest visual storytellers ever. Honestly, like he puts so much importance on doing it visually through sound, particularly in this movie, rather than telling you with exposition or stuff like that. Like there's the scenes with Jack where he learns about the mystery, like you're just seeing it, like him recreating the images or recreating the sound. Like he's not telling you about what the mystery is or what's happening. You're with the character there, discovering it with Jack. So it's just done in such a brilliant way. And another one of the kind of techniques that are kind of known with De Palma most after this, because it's the first time he used it, was the Steadicam, which he like starts off this film with like this great just like POV shot of the killer, and I this is one of my favorite intros of these films. I like to look at this as like him kind of taunting the other people in horror at the time, because obviously, like I said, he's like known for Carrie, Dress to Kill, Sisters. There's a lot of horror films that he made up to this point and was kind of known for that. So I feel like this is his way of kind of like looking at the kind of genre at the time, because a lot of them were stupid slashers, like it is in this one. It's a very like, it's like a parody of like slashers at the time at the 80s, where like that's all they were making in this like post like Halloween, Friday the 13th, like kind of boom of this late 70s, 80s. So this is like him making like his own very like cheap slasher, almost saying like, look how much better than I am at doing it than you, and how much better my horror films are better than yours. I feel like that's what he's saying here. And he ends that scene with like the Hitchcock kind of like psycho dagger into the woman in the shower, which I feel like it was almost like a reference to like what the kind of peaks of the genre of what they were before all these like sleazy slashers were getting made, because that's pretty much what this whole intro scene is. It's just like college kids like having sex and dancing to music, so it's all very, very sleazy. So yeah, I love the intro so much, and the Steadicam was, I used it in a lot of these films after this. I mean, the main ones I always think of is the Follow and Body Double. There's like a long tracking shot of when he's almost got like a Hitchcock set piece where he's like following somebody. I always think of that scene when I think of the Steadicam with De Palma, but this intro one, and when John Lithgow is like tracking Nancy later in the film, I always think of that as well. But Garrett Brown, the guy who created the Steadicam, the camera operator for The Shining, which of course has like probably the most famous Steadicam shot of all time, the tricycle following around the Overlook Hotel, he like came into this to kind of show them how to even use it, because it was a really new thing at the time. So he's coming off The Shining, debatably the greatest horror film of all time, and coming over to shoot this really like sleazy, cheap parody of a slasher film for De Palma. So I always think that's really funny. That they just made him do that. Which must have been a big culture shock coming off a Stanley Kubrick movie into this. But yeah, that's some of my favorite highlights of it's kind of like filmmaking techniques in the film.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned Garrett Brown because so when I first saw this film, there was a screening and then after there was a Q&A with Garrett Brown. And so
Oh,
Garrett
nice.
Brown is one of the great Philadelphians in filmmaking history. He's the inventor of the Steadicam and actually really kind of popularized. It wasn't the first, but I think it was the first mainstream to really use it. Was actually for Rocky, which of course is set here as well. So Garrett Brown is like one of definitely the most accomplished people in the film industry in the history of the city. So I love the fact that this Philly movie is he was a part of it. Really nice guy, and so I always hated handheld, and then he basically gets up there and talks about how he invented the Steadicam because he hates handheld. Then I talked to him a bit after and told him that I didn't like handheld, and his whole face lit up. He was like, "Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Like as a young kid, you hate handheld because he really does not like it." And he talks about how like our brains naturally stabilize, whereas handheld, like we don't see the world as handheld, even though a lot of people falsely think we do. And so he did mention there's one thing in that sequence that jumped out to me that he mentioned was a flaw, and that's there's one scene where one of the girls is because we're in the perspective of the killer, and one of the girls is like really close, and the human eye has like an instinct to kind of detect motion if it's nearby, and it realistically a human being would have looked and saw the killer like right there. It probably
Yeah,
would
is
have.
it when he like just moves off like an inch and it's like she can't see him outside the window? Yeah.
But yeah, so he actually brought that up that but he said they actually literally tried to make it look cheaper than like it would realistically be like have the
Yeah.
girls dancing looking into the window like no one ever really would do. So he said they like tried to make it look cheaper. And by this point, Garrett Brown was so good with the Steadicam that like the focus pullers and the crew could not keep up with them. And so they kept having to like redo it because no one could keep up with how quick he was with it. And like when the knife is there, like he's literally operating the Steadicam and holding the knife. So he was great at this by this point. I have nothing really to add on the split diopter shots. Like they're of course great. Brian De Palma would get along horribly with Greg Fraser because De Palma does not like out of focus images. He likes to use long lenses and keep everything in focus. Does not like out of focus. So him and Greg Fraser would be a terrible collaboration. Also uses split screen in this. He uses it in the beginning where we have the news with all of the tight close-ups of the sound equipment. Then he later uses it again for a phone call, but also uses split screen, which I think is not used enough in film. Like we said, De Palma just has such appreciation for the craft, and I love and he just likes to use all different techniques and different ways to make films. And one thing I really love about De Palma is his hatred of coverage. I hate coverage shooting, which is basically, let's say the three of us were in the same room. They would film, a shot of me talking, a shot of Oscar talking, a shot of Ryan talking, and like over the shoulders, and then like a master shot and just patch it together in the editing. Whereas De Palma likes like calculated cutting, like this story beat, this shot, this emotion, this shot. We're going to show this person talking because their reaction's important, or vice whatever the scene needs. He doesn't just kind of figure it out later in the editing room and film a bunch of coverage. So I love his hatred of coverage and just how precise he is with everything. And he doesn't like, just watching people talk. And by the end of this film, he gets full, purely cinematic here. Like the end, the third act of this film is so incredible for so many reasons. And it's just not words anymore. It's all picture and audio. And yeah, I love his hatred, like so many of his approaches to filmmaking. We see a lot of elements that he had been building up, like voyeurism and his ability to create suspense because he's known for thrillers. And very few filmmakers would have the balls to end their film the way he does. Like just that kind of ending where it's just like you think something else, that there's going to be more to it, and it just dips to black right there. It's such a powerful ending that we'll dive deeper in with later, but it's such a perfect ending for this film that only someone like Brian De Palma would end their film like. the way he really does like call your attention to the artifice of film, like whether it's that when he pieces together like the still photos to create like a comic strip motion of, and then the way the sound synchronizes, and with the horror movie, the girl's scream not being the scream that's used in the movie, and just calling our attention to the artifice of film in so many ways is something that I really love the way Brian De Palma explores that. And it's worth
I know
noting that
some people don't like when they get like almost reminded that they're watching a film, but I love it so much when De Palma just goes all out with his techniques.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like when filmmakers kind of comment on it and stuff. I hate the idea of like, oh, you can't ever remind them you're watching a movie. Like, oh, maybe the theater didn't give it away. Like, it's also worth noting that he wrote this film as well. And he really didn't write. Well, he wrote some films, but there's a lot of his films he didn't write, and this one he wrote. So that's I think very interesting. Also, at the time, the biggest budget he ever worked with. He thought this would be a $3 million small budget movie. And then when Travolta got involved, that shot up to $18 million with another $9 million for marketing, which was the biggest of his career.
Yeah, it was almost like a film. I remember I watched an interview with Noah Baumbach with him, and he talked about it like it was just this really small film that until he was just talking to Travolta just off chance, and he asked him what he was working on, and asked to see it, and just loved it. So it's a nice coincidence because like De Palma had worked with him before he was like the big like star that he was. So yeah, it's cool they had that connection. I know, and it was a shame that he almost like killed his career after this because he just thought. I mean, he'd done nothing for like 10 years until Tarantino brought him back. So it's really weird.
Imagine like arguably the best performance of your career kills your career. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, no.
It is crazy. It's actually crazy.
But I think we're going to have a new segment on the show for the first time. We're going to get into an intermission. So shout out to Raiders of the Lost podcast, who has an intermission. We're going to do ours a little differently from how they do theirs, but basically just have, some fun games to kind of help interact with the audience better. And so Ryan, what do you got for us?
Yeah, so Alex was bragging about how well or how good he would be at a guess the release date year for films a game. So I thought I'd test out his knowledge along with Oscar here to see who gets more points. How do you want to spread out the points? Do you want to make it harder or easier? Because I was going to do like 2 points if you get like 2 years away, or the 1 point if you get 2 years outside on either end before or after, and then 2 points if you get 1 year off. How many points do you want to give out?
I'm up for whatever.
Let's go for that.
Yeah, okay, we'll just do that. Right. I'll start off with Alex, since I'm going to give you an easy one to begin with, just to set the tone. That's one you should get. I'll be shocked if you don't get it. But what is the release date year of Wong Kar-wai's Chongqing Express?
94.
Yep, okay. That's 3 points.
Ooh.
I would have been very shocked if you got that one
wrong. I would have said,
I
initially thought 95. Ooh.
I got no hesitation. Right off the rip.
That's an easy one. I picked a favourite from both of you to start off with. So, Oscar, what is the release date of Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas?
1984, easily.
Yeah.
Easy.
Real quick.
3 points right at the bat.
Question. If he were to, I know he would have never missed that one, but if he were to miss that, do I have a chance to steal the points from him? Or vice versa?
That could be interesting.
If he does, you only get 1 point.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, that's the, yeah. Okay, Alex.
Right,
a little bit harder this time.
Okay.
What is the release date year of Argento's Suspiria?
70. It's either 77, 78, or 79. The safe bet would be to say 78, because that would be that would be for the way the points are going. But I think it's 77.
Oh, he's got it straight on. It is 77. That was a good pull. I thought I'd catch you out there with a horror film.
Throw me off on. I was not expecting. That's not one I would have expected.
Amazing film.
Great film.
Oscar, it is his masterpiece. But Oscar, I've got an earlier film for you. What is the release date of the Wachowskis' Speed Racer?
2008.
Yep.
Get
Free for
in.
free on all of them.
Get in.
Would you have got that one, Alex?
Yeah, I would, I was 100% still on that point if he didn't get it.
Such a good film.
Okay.
It's so good.
Not as good as the cartoon, though.
I haven't
I don't
seen
think I've
it,
ever
but
seen the cartoon.
I grew up
it's
on
such
the
a good
cartoon.
film.
One of my favorites ever.
I've seen the Speed Racer when I was like a kid, and I'm not sure if I've seen the cartoon or the movie. Like,
It was
I'm
my
really
dad's
not sure.
favorite cartoon, so
Yeah,
I
I have like vague memories of it. But going up another harder level, Alex, what is the release date of Jack Demy's The Umbrellas of Cherbourg?
64.
Oh my god.
Jeez, man.
3 points.
This guy.
He's living up to his name so far.
I was about to say, he actually is. That's crazy.
No hesitation.
I thought a musical
crazy.
would put you off.
That musical is one of my favorite genres.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it is an incredible film. I do love that. I need to see more Jack Demy. Absolutely.
Okay. Oscar, what is the release date of The Graduate?
That's a layup.
Is it 1969?
Nope. 67. The Graduate, Easy Rider, and Bonnie and Clyde, the 3 films in 67 that ended the studio system.
Why do we both get a point then? Because I was 2 years off and he got it.
Uh-huh.
Damn it, man. I was close.
Okay, this one, I put this in to throw you off, Alex. So this one, it should work, right?
Please know I'm off.
What is the release date of Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
It's either it's the late 80s. I want to go 88. I think it's either 88, 87, 89, 80. I'm gonna go 88.
Oh my god.
What am I supposed to do? That's crazy. That's crazy.
I love that movie. That was.
Oh my god.
I thought you just recently watched it for the first time, so I was thinking you might not know the release date.
I recently finished it for the first time. I'd seen it, but I'd never finished it.
Oh my god. That's crazy.
Okay, Oscar, for your fourth one, what is the release date of Darren Aronofsky's The Wrestler?
I've never seen it.
Neither have I, but I know.
Wait, I checked your. Wait, I got this off your Letterboxd, I'm sure.
I've not seen The Wrestler.
What?
I haven't seen it, but I could get it.
Shut up.
I feel like that might be unfair.
Not seen The Wrestler.
I swear I just went through your Letterboxd to get movies.
Nope. Not seen it.
Is he getting a new question? Because if not, I'll say it just for pride.
Yeah, I'll give him a new one. What is it?
2008.
Yeah, it is. I'll give you yours whilst I tried to find one. So, right, this is your last one. Right, so what is Ingmar Bergman's Hour of the Wolf?
Is this me?
No, that's Alex.
Oh, what was Oscar's?
No, he's trying to get.
I'm trying to find the new one.
Your final one.
Hour of the Wolf. I am pretty sure this is 1960 on the dot.
Oh, he's miles off.
Damn, what's it, like 68?
It is 69.
Oh shit!
It's 68.
Damn it.
Yep. I got it on the second attempt. I know I don't get points, but
Have I got 2 left? Have you got 2 left for me then?
Yeah. What is the release date of Yojimbo? Take your time because you will pass, or you match Alex with this, I think. Or you probably pass him.
I've,
Guys, Oscar, perfect score.
no, I haven't.
No, he doesn't. He got 1 point for graduate.
Because I only got one wrong.
Yeah, Alex is.
If you get
I've
this
got
right,
two
you have
left.
10. Alex is on
American,
13.
I'm trying to think. I'm stuck between two. I'm trying to picture him. I'm gonna say 61.
Waterpool. It is 61.
I was so ready to steal that.
Yes, come on.
I thought it'd put you off, thinking it was maybe 50s.
Yeah, I was thinking 50s, so I was like, nah, this feels like early 60s Kurosawa. Get in. Okay, final one. Give it to me.
This is to match, Alex. Okay, what is the release date of Sallow?
That was.
He's gonna get it. I already know he's gonna get it. He's gonna get close enough.
That was dead on 1960, wasn't it?
Mm-mm.
I'm gonna go 68.
Nope.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I wasn't sure. I know it's 60 though, right?
It's the 70s.
Oh.
Is it 70? Is it 1970?
75.
Oh,
yeah, we got
that's crazy. I don't know why I pictured 1960 in my head.
I thought crazy. It was, I thought for sure it was in the 60s.
So yeah, Alex wins with 13 points.
GG. Well played, well played.
Well played. Only
that
got
was
one.
Impressive. I was starting to get worried that I was about to give you a Bergman one and you were just going to get it like straight away again.
Dude, I'm not going to lie. I was nervous as soon as you said Bergman because he makes so many films that it's harder to
Yeah.
There's a Bergman film year in history. So it's like I can't think like, okay, what years did Bergman do a film? He did a film every year.
He was pumping out films like crazy.
Yeah.
And none of them were bad.
That was the key to throwing me off was Bergman.
I'll just give you 5 Bergmans.
All right, I guess let's get back into Brian De Palma's Blowout, where here he has so much commentary on, you know, just America as a country as a whole, which is very clear, and just the kind of Americana symbols and mindset and all of that. And I think this is so clear in the way the color palette of the film, how he might not always do it in the most bold and in-your-face way, but he really paints the film in the colors red and blue. And we'll throw some images up if you're watching on YouTube of some examples. You can see this thing where like the hitman in 30th Street Station is wearing red and blue tie. Multiple times, John Travolta and Nancy Allen, one of them's wearing blue, one's wearing red. The wallpaper in John Travolta's apartment, red, white, and blue, often having red outside in contrast with the blue curtains and blue bed sheets. And then the lighting, where he paints the film frequently in red light. This is not something that was uncommon to see in a De Palma film. But then the third act, once we get to Penn's Landing, where the film kind of wraps up, that's where for the first time we really start seeing a lot of blue light and really paints the film in blue. And I think there's clearly so much he's commenting here on the country. And De Palma was very big in like the 60s and like the whole countercultural movement. So clearly he has something he wants to say here. And, you know, for like the replica of the Liberty Bell they have with the American flag shots at the very end, the fireworks, the symbol of 4th of July, crashing into a colonial kind of storefront at the parade. And what it really comes down to is this idea of conspiracy, which is big in the country at the time, coming off of the JFK assassination and the conspiracies and the way people rewatched that video and were kind of the idea of the conspiracy of a second shooter is clearly a big influence here, along with the whole Watergate scandal of the 70s, which was under a decade prior to when this film came out. So very fresh in De Palma and the country's mind at the time. And this idea of just knowing something that you can't get someone else to believe. and the conflicts of a B movie getting caught in like this big political conspiracy. So there's so much I think he's trying to say here on the state of the country. But Oscar, I'm sure you have your own takes on the commentary here.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say, but I think it's such an interesting kind of perspective to go over this film to make it that kind of political thriller. And it's even better the fact, like you said, the film just looks red and blue. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous for the majority of the time. The lighting is absolutely incredible. But yeah, my kind of brush up on that kind of American part of history, I guess, isn't fantastic. But I love a good conspiracy. Like JFK, the film, absolutely love that film. It's so good, and that goes head, just dives head first into conspiracies. This, I think, it does it really, really well. But yeah, the use of the red and blue lighting is gorgeous, especially in the last act. This film just has several of my favorite shots ever. It's really unbelievable, partially down to that red and blue lighting. But yeah, I don't have a ton to say on kind of the political side of things, but I just think it makes it really interesting, and it's just such a. I think he balances the kind of political and romance side of the films really, really well, and intertwines them really, really well, which could have been handled really, really poorly. But I haven't actually seen Blow Up, so I don't know kind of how much inspiration he took from that, whether that was focused around politics. I'm assuming it wasn't.
Blow Up's like I mean, I watched it thinking it was going to be like a mystery, but it really doesn't care about the mystery of the guy like noticing the murder. So it's really kind of nothing like this at all. It's just really that one scene that he kind of takes. It's more like a hangout movie almost, Blow Up, rather compared to this. But yeah, I don't really have much to say other than what I've already said about just I liked how the connection to like De Palma's early films where it was always talking about conspiracies. These characters were obsessed with JFK, especially in his movies in the 60s. But yeah, what you were saying about the production design, I think, is some phenomenal production design here, and definitely has some great lighting throughout the whole film, especially since a lot of it's set at night. I think it really makes use of the colors, like the neon signs outside the apartments and stuff. I think that scene when Sally, no, I don't remember his name, but she knocks him out with the bottle, and it goes to the overhead shot. If I'm lying on the bed, I love some of the camera movements in that scene, and that whole scene is just covered in like Argento like colors all over the room. I love his use of colors throughout the whole film, and just yeah, his camera movement throughout. I think he transitions between scenes so smoothly. Particularly like the scene when John Lithgow's like kind of stabbing the girl, and it kind of goes up to the alleyway, onto the road following Nancy, and then into the apartment and up to the window. I love the scenes like that, and I think his camera movements are just amazing at times. Like I said, like the overhead shot of the bed. He also has like the overhead shots of his work with like all the sound, and when he's trying to find his tapes when it's been erased, and he's just got everything all over the floor. That's kind of like one of the most iconic shots from the film. So yeah, I think he has some great cinematography just throughout the whole film. That 360 degrees pan, I don't think we've mentioned that either. When Travolta comes in and he's trying to find his missing tape when everything's been erased, and it revolves around his room as he's like frantically trying to like search it. I think that's one of the best shots in the film as well. So yeah, just a great blend of cinematography and these production design throughout the whole thing. I think it's some of the best I've ever seen.
This film has a handful of some of my greatest shots ever, and I'll touch on a tad more when we get to score, but just the probably the main shot of the film that kind of glances around on social media a lot is the spiral fireworks shot, which is, yeah, like I said, quite possibly the greatest shot ever. It's just, I don't know how he does it, man. It's so good. Just the lighting, the everything, the camera movements, and the emotion and the score just in that single shot is just so unrivaled. It's crazy. The feeling I get every time I watch that shot is truly unbelievable. And even before that, we get that shot of Sally reaching out and screaming in front of a massive US flag, which is just like with that shot as well. They just, the amount of emotion they just get out of me is crazy. It's such a haunting shot, but it's so good. Something about like shots of characters in front of US flags like that, I don't know, they just work really, really well. But yeah, just the sequences, and there's even the lighting when they're kind of John Travolta is kind of following Nancy and kind of John Lithgow around after she's kind of holding her captive almost, and he's trying to listen in to where she is. The kind of that lighting of the subway is so good, and you can get that orange lighting kind of underneath inside the subway tunnels is so brilliant.
I love the shot of, you know, when Travolta's chasing them and he runs down into like the sidewalk bit, and it's like they're shooting from inside the tram, and it transitions into like them having a conversation inside it, like straight from him running towards it. I love that shot.
And you kind of get those split double shots where he's trying to listen in. You can split double shot of him and like a sign as well. It looks so nice. But yeah, that scene where he strangles that woman in the bathroom, I think is shot really well. Kind of get those high angled and low angled shots from both. But yeah, it's just we'll touch on it in a minute, but the sound and just about everything is just elevates these shots to just a whole nother level. And yeah, the filmmaking on display is second to none.
That ending might be like De Palma's best set piece, because it's like 20 minutes of like him chasing Nancy and Lithgow basically around the kind of train station. I think De Palma throughout his career has been like almost criticized at times for almost copying elements of Hitchcock's films, but I think the main thing they learned from him is how to do these amazing set pieces, and this is probably the best one of his career. I think it creates some great tension of Jack kind of chasing Sally, especially because, I mean, we have that scene earlier in the film where it's kind of introduced that Jack had a guy with a wire on, and he ends up getting killed when it like burns through his chest. So there's like his like guilt for getting that guy killed. So I think it adds a lot of tension on like Sally's like life and Jack chasing her. So I think that scene is amazing. It also just culminate. I think it's one of my favorite endings ever. Like the culmination end of that. Like you said, that shot of Sally screaming over the barrier is like haunting, and the score by Pino Donaggio was perfect. Kind of going into the composer, I think the first kind of thing he came in to do was Possession by De Palma, because before in De Palma's movies, he had Berman Herrmann, which was the composer for Taxi Driver and a lot of Hitchcock's films. But he ended up dying. Like I think it was literally he made the score of Taxi Driver on Christmas Eve, and then he went back to his hotel and died. Really sad story about him, but he ended up not being able to finish Obsession with De Palma, and that was when I think Pino Donaggio came in to finish it. I think that's what happened. But yeah, Berman Herrmann was one of the goats, so it's a shame they never got to keep doing scores with De Palma, but Donaggio made some phenomenal scores with like Body Double, and then this is probably De Palma's best score, so it kind of worked out
definitely.
for the best.
He said it's his favorite score, I think, out of any of his films, and yeah, absolutely, just one of my favorite film scores as well. Just the level of effect it has on me emotionally, and just elevating it is insane.
Did you know as well? See the chase scene for the parade. They like shot that, and the guy that was like responsible for taking the film home went into a shop to get something, and some kids went up to his car and stole all the footage. So they had to redo it. And
Oh my
they just
God.
never got it back.
That parade
too.
That parade scene
What'd you
was
say?
filmed using 11 cameras, 1,000 extras, 25 stunt drivers, and vehicles from Philadelphia police and fire departments. Also, while using a special helicopter-mounted camera rig, which they got from Norway.
I'm
Such a
surprised
crazy
De Palma
set
didn't have
piece.
a heart attack when he heard that had been stolen.
Yeah, this is by Act 3. It's just, I love how it's just a full Philly showcase, and like there's something really special about seeing a film, especially like actual good quality film that just showcases the places that you grew up, inhabiting and walking through and seeing and driving by, and like there's something really special about that. And I love how it's just a time capsule of the city, and like just seeing 1980s Philly, which really didn't look that different from how it looks today, honestly. And like just right away, like I recognize stuff. And like I'm also, even though I love seeing Philly in films, like I'm definitely very critical of the authenticity normally. And this is one I really have very few criticisms about the way it captures the city, because you could just see, even before I knew that De Palma grew up here, I was like, you could just see there's a love for the city, and like it doesn't feel like the standard corporate establishing shot of the city and like, oh, look at these landmarks. Like there's a real style to these images. They're actually distinct. There's images I would literally frame and like hang like a painting. And De Palma said he used to like to walk around the city a lot, and you really see that here. And like, I'll break down real quick the way he uses some of the landmarks of the city. The first one, I guess, would be major one would be when he's capturing the sound and the actual blowout happens. That's on the Wissahickon Creek. And De Palma went to a school called Friend Select, which is in I think Winmore, Pennsylvania, where I don't know where in the city he lived. I couldn't find out where, but he probably took that road going to school every day, judging by, unless he was in like Northeast or like one of those real northern neighborhoods of the city, he probably took Lincoln Drive to go to school. And Lincoln Drive is the worst road in America to ever exist. Imagine like two really tight lanes on each side of the street, and just like the most windy road ever, with like mountains on one side and like falling off to the river on the other side. It's literally the worst road ever invented. So it's you can make a horror movie out of that on its own. Right away, just local news, it's just like hearing like things like Market Street and Penn's Landing, even though the reporter doesn't sound like she has any clue what Penn's Landing looks like when she says it. But they also have Dave Roberts, who was a local news anchor in the film, which is great to see. Got to showcase the Great Reading Terminal Market, which there's the following sequence through, coming from the Gallery Mall, which actually now has an AMC movie theater, and into Reading Terminal Market, which is just like kind of a landmark food spot, which is always mobbed. And then just like you see City Hall, and you see the Apollo Theater right by there, which is no longer around. That's something I've never been to the Apollo Theater, but that's where he at. That's like where his office is when they're working on the film, the horror movie. And then like that rainy shot of Broad Street where you see City Hall and you have the jazz music, because there's such a rich jazz history here, is so beautiful. The old city shot of the Ben Franklin Bridge. That's just incredible. And I just love seeing little things, like seeing the SEPTA logos on buses and trains. Even though SEPTA, the design's changed a little bit, that logo is still there. And Philly's pennants, the best team in baseball, of course. Independence Hall, the kind of riverfront towers, which you see in the fireworks scenes. Those are very expensive real estate here, but they're just like buildings I've just always seen, driving by them or walking by them. And yeah, I think, and then of course when we get into the third act, it's just a full showcase of the city, starting with 30th Street Station, which just going to and from New York, whether it's for work or when I went to film school up there, I've spent so much time in that train station, and it literally looks exactly the same for the most part. Like it has not changed. And just getting a whole great suspense thriller sequence in this place that I've been so many times is so awesome. And then you see
he loves to do a chase through a train station. He does it in Carlito's way as well. And Dress to Kill, actually. He really loves it. Especially when, I mean, he doesn't do it in this, but when they actually go into the trams, he always likes to shoot like the action between those. There wasn't a chase with that in this.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's such a great sequence. He also showcases, I think, one of the biggest parts of like the art of the city is the mural art. And there's so much great like mural art in this city. And where Travolta's apartment is right next to the fire station, which that's still there. And the mural's different now, but just having that mural, showcasing the mural art of the city, I think is a very important part of capturing the kind of spirit of the city. And I love how he really, makes sure to show us that, because the mural art is some of the best art that you'll see here. And yeah, then of course we go after 30th Street Station. We get the more great City Hall stuff with, like both of you talked about, that great aerial shot where he literally drives through City Hall is awesome. And then of course the best Philly reference, the Mummers Parade, the best day of the year, the greatest parade in the world, where they actually play real Mummers music. This parade is not real. There's no such thing as a Liberty Day parade. They base that off of the bicentennial. The Mummers are there for New Year's Day, but pretty much any parade or event, even though they won't have all the Mummers, they'll have one or two clubs. The string bands probably play some Mummers music, so it's such an essential part of the city. De Palma said he used to go to the Mummers parade. He loves the Mummers, so including that is like the biggest like thumbs up I could ever give the film. It's awesome. And then
no serial killers using the Mummers Parade as a backdrop to their murders.
wait, which one was that?
This he uses like the what's it called? What was the parade called in Blowout?
The Liberty Day.
Liberty Bell. Yeah, he puts the Liberty Bell on all these like killing, or all the people that he kills, to like create like the trend in this.
Oh yeah.
I was saying that there's no people in real life that have done a Mummers Parade like serial killing with.
Not that I know of, but honestly, nothing would surprise me with that parade. Literally nothing would surprise me. It wouldn't be the craziest thing. And then ends it on Penn's Landing, which is just a beautiful view of the river. Great spot to smoke blunts. And yeah, it's just a beautiful scenery he ends the film with, in contrast with this kind of horrible on-screen actions with the beautiful scenery of Penn's Landing, which is it's just one of the best spots of the city. So I just love the showcase of the city here, and seeing a filmmaker who really clearly does love the city and captures the beauty of it in a way that, you know, many other filmmakers wouldn't be able to execute. But I think it's time to get into, we've talked about the beautiful images a lot. Now we got to talk about what this film really is here to highlight, which is the sound. And of course, the music comes with that as part of the audio. So Oscar, what are your thoughts on the sound of this film?
Well, where to even start, man? Obviously, the whole film is based around the idea of sound, and for a film like this, you need sound to perfection. I just love the way that we just have scenes where the sound is just completely isolated, and we're just listening to that, and it is so lovely to hear, especially in that car crash scene where I mentioned before. We're kind of picking up on various different sounds around the place. I think it's done so well, and how the direction kind of reflects that as well, as we're kind of moving with his microphone, and we're kind of, the sound is moving with that, and the specific sounds that he is listening to as well. It's done so well. Kind of the score as well. Like I mentioned it previously, just one of those scores that just elevates every scene so much to just a new emotion. The piano in this film is so incredibly devastating, and I just listen to it on repeat because it is so good. But yeah, it's scored to perfection. But yeah, the sound, especially like I said, with headphones on, it is just so blissful, and it is crazy. But yeah, I just love filmmakers that pay such close attention and sharp attention to sound specifically, because it is so important. And this is just exactly one of those films that just does it like no other film.
Yeah, I just find the whole premise of it so interesting, like the whole concept of like the B movie, like sound technician like going out to find the sounds. I really like the scenes where it's like kind of showing the process of trying to match up the sound in the film as well, because it's kind of like it's showing like a different time in film, which is really interesting, because like, I don't think you could really do it now because it would just be digital. So like it's from a different time of filmmaking, and sound's not really something that, I think Alex said earlier, that it's not really something that is really put much into films really. So yeah, it's a really unique kind of side of film that isn't shown often. And I think probably the best scene that kind of shows off the sound is the scene when Travolta goes out to collect the sound effects on that bridge. Like you said, inspired by De Palma sending out his own sound guy to get new wind effects from Dress to Kill. And I think it's just a massively shot scene, kind of blending in all those split diopter shots, and is like moving around like the way to collect sounds, like with the frog and the owl. I mean, that's just the Masterful scene. And yeah, that's like the main scene that's influenced by Antonio's blow up, which, like I said, is like I think Alex mentioned this earlier. It's kind of like the other switch of the instead of sound or instead of image, it's sound in this one, and I think it's a great kind of spin on that because I feel like it's a film that didn't really take advantage of the mystery kind of premise in that. So like it kind of takes that and kind of elevates it into like a full blown out film, kind of like Tarantino would do with like Lady of Snowblood to Kill Bill or something like that. I think it's a great idea that he's expanded into this much better execution. So yeah, this is incredible sound. There's so many like the end, the score is haunting at the end. Cutting back to Jack, it's a great scream. It's a haunting ending to the film. But yeah, I think the sound is amazing and one of the highlights of the film.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have such appreciation for the sound of film, and I think a lot of my favorite filmmakers are filmmakers who really care and appreciate that part of the craft. Because I think there's a lot of films that just kind of pay it no mind. They just wanted this like ambience in the background, or just there to like fill the space, or just have no sound because they just only want you to really focus on the dialogue or the talking. So I really like filmmakers who appreciate that part of the craft and what it can do. And he opens the film with sound, rightfully so. And then at the end of that like horror movie that we see that we open up the film with, we end with the terrible horror movie scream, which we know you would never see in a real horror movie, and it kind of throws us off to once again highlight the artifice of film and show us the process of filmmaking. And then we see them watching it, we see them isolate that sound, and just right away he's calling our attention to this part of the craft. And then what he does that's also really interesting is then he has the opening credit sequence where almost any opening credit sequence in film will be music. No one has quiet or sound in opening credit sequence that I can think of except for this film, where he has all foreshadowing sounds. He has the sound of the wind, the sound of the heartbeat, and the sound of tires screeching, and all foreshadowing, no music. And also like he has like the kind of sound meter as animation with the titles, which is really cool. And then of course, like Ryan talked about the scene on the bridge where he's there to get the sound of wind, like Dan Sable was in real life, and he has like the three cutbacks on the sound to kind of emphasize the importance of getting this one sound effect. And then I love even more though when he goes back to the memory of the sound. These just it shows the power of audio and how he can really lock in and relive the memory of those images. Where you don't see him reliving it through his face, we see his hand like move the pen moving like the mic, and just the way sound can literally put people in a trance and just recreate a memory. He does so brilliantly with that sequence. I think it's one of the best of the film. It's just De
Hmm.
Palma on his absolute A game.
Sorry, and I think it was really interesting how when it happens in real time, all you do hear is the sound, and then when he's recalling it, you actually start to see it visually. I think it was really interesting how he kind of like built it up like that, and we kind of learn along with Jack, which so yeah, it really is one of the best parts.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's yeah, that's totally one of the most brilliant things he does. It's such a great sequence. And then it for so this is a film where it really is sound over music. Like everyone knows if you've heard our other episodes how much I value music. And I have no criticism of this film's lack of music because its sound is sound and music are essentially really the same thing at the end of the day. And he really uses just the sound so well here. He doesn't use it rhythmically like, I normally favor, but he has such care in the sound design of the film. And then we get to that third act, and even though the music's been taking a backseat to the sound, he just lets Pino Donaggio absolutely cook in the third act, going from, romantic but sad strings with the flashing lights to the piano of the fireworks when he realizes her death, and then the strings again when we go back to the winter before hearing her voice. And just that entire third act, the score is just where there's just pretty much no words for the entire third act. Is just the absolute audio filmmaking and visual, of course, on the absolute A game until we finally return back to the inciting incident of the film, just getting that sound effect. and they finally got the Scream after all this conspiracy and murder and death, where not just Nancy Allen's character was murdered, but multiple lookalikes were murdered just for simply looking like her. After all this murder and death, this B horror movie has finally got their Scream. And there's just so much irony under that. At Penn's Landing, we don't hear a single scream. When it's the real death, we hear no screams. And now they finally, just that final shot of him holding his ears is got to be one of the greatest final shots in history, in my opinion.
For sure.
Absolutely, yes. Full circle ending, but it's just kind of one of those endings it's so shocking because it's just crazy to use that in that circumstance. But yeah,
you almost forget about that you needed the Scream as well, and it just comes in
you
so perfectly.
You do, and then at the beginning with the Scream, the Scream they have right at the beginning is so funny because it's such a bad scream. I just laugh at it every time. It's so funny, and then they're kind of the bickering between him and his the other guy he works with, and he's always trying to get him to find new girls for the Scream, and he's when he's trying to get stuff oh, come in here, is so funny. But yeah, I think it's such a clever element to kind of get that kind of secular narrative ending in a sense. But yeah, so funny.
I love his bickering with the guy that he works with. I forgot to mention it earlier, but they talk about again, back to the bad horror sequels. I think they say this is the 5th film they've done in 2 years.
Oh yeah, just blood this and blood that, and
yeah, it's 4 sequels.
Titles. And then this is the one that isn't got blood in the title. I can't remember what it's called. So funny.
Yeah, we forget how much we didn't mention how much, even though Brian De Palma is known for these thrillers and these kind of dark subject matter and violence, his films are almost always have very good comedy sprinkled throughout too. He definitely knows how to balance comedy with seriousness and thrillers and darker elements.
Yeah, I mean, I really love the dark elements. I think he got criticized for this because throughout a lot of his films, he almost got criticized of hating women because Nancy Allen dies at the end of this. I think he got a lot of hate for that happening, and Dress to Kill and Body Double, he also got a lot of hate for just women dying. So it was a weird one because he makes all these pretty much almost masterpieces, but he never actually got hits. They were always almost flops when they came out, and they're all really kind of cult classics that were reevaluated later on, and everybody realized how great they were. But really, at the time when he was releasing films, they were just kind of flop after flop a lot of the time, until apart from Carrie and Scarface, really.
His 2 weakest films.
I haven't seen Carrie. Scarface is a banger. I love Scarface.
Scarface.
I think it's a good film, but I think it's his, out of all the ones I've seen, I think I've seen 10, maybe more. I think it's his worst film.
Yeah, that's because you didn't watch the other 10 with kids behind you talking.
Hey, but is this everyone's favorite De Palma?
Easily for me, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is his best for me, but close runner-up for me, Carlito's Way in Phantom of Paradise, definitely, and Body Double as well. Those are kind of my next 3 after that, but yeah, he doesn't miss at all, just banger after banger. So good. He's kind of like Kubrick in a sense that people don't really know just how many genres he's done. He's done war films, he's done thrillers, he's done horrors, he's done sci-fi, he's done
Mission
everything.
Impossible. He created
Mission
the biggest
Impossible,
action
exactly.
film
He started Mission
franchise
Impossible.
of all time.
Casualties of War is such a good war film.
Yeah, it's so underrated.
One of the best shot war films. So good. Yeah, started Mission Impossible. I need to rewatch that first one actually. I still love it, but yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm trying to. My internet's being super slow. I'm trying to pull up my De Palma rankings.
Letterboxd is down, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, because my number 2 would either be Scarface or The Untouchables.
Untouchables is great.
They're great. They're in my top 10. Mine's is Blowout, Dress to Kill, Body Double, Carlito's Way, and then Phantom of the Paradise. I kind of he's horror thriller movies more than his crimes, but
Snake Eyes as well is another absolute banger.
I'm still so sick about it. they screened Body Double and Dress to Kill last year, and I was away for both of them. I'm still sick about it that I had to miss them.
They're so good.
They're both really good, but I think Body Double's incredible. It's
Body
so
Double's soundtrack is amazing.
It's such a good film.
Yeah, I've only seen I think 6 or 7 of his films, but I definitely want to watch more. He has an insanely large filmography. Like
it's crazy.
Yeah, he's got 29 feature films.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's a
Snake
shame what's
Eyes, I
happened
think.
to him because he's kind of after what film was it? The Black Dahlia. I think it was that.
Black
He kind of
Dahlia. I
abandoned
still
the
need to see
Hollywood
Black
system.
Dahlia, Ad Obsession, and
Yeah.
Sisters as well. Is another
Yeah.
one I want to watch.
He's kind of abandoned the Hollywood system after that and just doing like independent films. And he got majorly screwed over with his last film because he did not even get didn't even get final cut on it.
Oh, damn.
That pretty much got
I'm
took
pretty.
away from him.
He's retired, doesn't he? I think he's.
I think so. That it sounded so
unfortunately.
bad. Domino from 2019. The production sounded so bad that I think he just can't be bothered anymore.
First, sorry for him,
I'd
man.
love to see him get like a budget and work with the best again, but it's a shame.
It's sad that we're kind of in this era where auteurs like all we kind of hear about now are just struggling and just have almost given up with that kind of side of things. Obviously, still pulling through, but even people like Lynch as well, who are just struggling, have pitched things and just like you don't turn down a pitch from David Lynch. Like, what are you doing?
Insane.
It's crazy.
I actually
Yeah,
saw
it's like
that.
De Palma doesn't.
Season 4. That's what we want. Twin Peaks season 4. That's what we'll have that
No,
instead, please.
from David Lynch. We don't want more TV. We want a David Lynch.
True. I love a film more, but I would not mind a season 4 of Twin Peaks.
I haven't seen Twin Peaks. That's why that's not what
He suggested that he has ideas for season 4. He said that recently. He does.
I did see that.
But yeah, it's sad to kind of admit that he probably will never make another film, Brian De Palma. But yeah, he's one of the absolute greats for me. It's such a shame.
He doesn't have that like early success of Coppola to fall off of. He doesn't have a winery just to sell for 120 million.
Yeah, he doesn't.
His next film.
Yeah, Coppola's out here self-funding. So I mean, if Coppola wasn't self-funding, he'd probably be in the same boat.
Yeah.
Can him and Spielberg not give some money over to De Palma?
Yeah, George Lucas is absolutely minted.
Yeah, George Lucas.
but Brian De Palma was the biggest Star Wars hater at the original screening, so George Lucas probably like
was it? I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, Brian De Palma like ripped it to shreds when they first screened it. He thought it was horrible. But actually, the opening credits of like the floating text of the start of Star Wars was because Brian De Palma was like, "I don't know what's going on. Why are we here? All this and that."
I didn't know that.
Floating prologue that I never read until I had seen it like 25 times.
Oh my god! Yeah, you kind of got that group of Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, Brian De Palma. Who else is in that? Scorsese. Was Scorsese in that? Yeah, he was.
Scorsese, Spielberg, Palma, Coppola.
Spielberg, yeah.
Lucas.
There's kind of a group of guys, and De Palma's kind of come off the worst, I guess, from those career-wise. But he's probably my favorite out of all those directors, honestly.
He's Tarantino's favorite. Tarantino calls him the best filmmaker of his generation. Like, he speaks so highly of De Palma. I think the only filmmaker who he might speak more highly of is Leone.
Two goats.
Absolutely. But does anyone else have anything they wanted to add?
Nope.
I don't think so.
It's streaming on Amazon Prime over here. Go watch it for anyone in the UK. Absolutely worth the watch.
Absolutely worth the watch. We highly recommend it. But if you've watched into this point, I would assume you've seen it. And if you've watched this and haven't seen it, then I don't know why the fuck you've been watching. But like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. Let us know what's your favorite Brian De Palma film, and leave your rankings of the movie Brats. Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, George Lucas, and Brian De Palma. What is your ranking of those 5? Because you can really arrange it anyway when you have a group of filmmakers that talented. We'll be back next week with another great episode. Thank you.